to the BI use case. It's still really early stages, but we're trying to figure out what our longer term goals are there and all those kind of things. We have the User Essentials Squad, which their focus is the end user of Grafana. So they work on all these flows like navigation, login, theming, dashboard management, all those kind of things. And then we have the third one that is one that we'll dive more into probably, which is the plugins platform. I'm not gonna spoil the surprise. I think Marcus and Jack can tell you more about it. But maybe we can do a quick intro for each of the people in the team here. I don't know, maybe Jack, do you want to start? Well, I already see your name, but which team you're in and what you're up to.
Yeah, sure. So hi everyone. My name is Uche Chukwabasi, but you can call me Uche for short. I'm a software engineer at Grafana. I'm part of like the front-end platform squad, formerly as it's called, but now I'm part of like the user essential squad, which we would still discuss in a bit. And yeah, I live and work from a country called Nigeria in Africa. And yeah, I'm super excited to be here. I'm a huge community fan, and yeah, I'm happy to like get to learn more about each and every one of you. Yeah, Marcus.
Yes, I'm muted. Sorry. Yeah, so my name is Marcus. I'm used to be working in the Grafana front-end platform squad, but as Natalia said, we are split, so I'm working in the plugins platform squad. I'm based in Stockholm, Sweden, Europe. And I guess we will go into a little more details about what our squad's going to do later in this call. Jack, you want to continue?
Yeah, sure. Hi, my name's Jack. I've been happily working in the front-end platform squad for 9 months now. Recently moved over to the plugins platform with Marcus. And yeah, I'm based out in Italy, near Milan. Alexa?
Thank you, Jack. Hi, I'm Alexa. I am new, kinda, in Grafana and in the front-end platform squad, now in the User Essentials squad, and I am based on Amsterdam. So I'm really happy to be here, and hopefully I can help in anything that the community want to hear. And Tobias.
Yes. I'm Tobias. I'm based in Sweden, a little bit here and there. You never know where I end up. This is my 4th time being an intern at Grafana. So I'm gonna spend the summer mainly focusing on accessibility issues. I'm also in the User Essentials squad. Yes. Natalia.
So that's us. We have quite a. Yeah, I did. I'm in Berlin. I didn't say that. Berlin, Germany. But so the idea for it was to introduce a little bit about what the plugins platform is up to, because yeah, we also we have some plugin developers here, and maybe you can give us some input and we can discuss some things. But I'll leave that's for Marcus. Who knows better?
Yeah, I actually going to share an issue with you guys. I don't know if you, Marcus, also can bring that up or share that. So we're kind of we only have had like a couple of weeks as a squad together, but our main focus is basically focusing on the developer experience when it comes to extending and building plugins for Grafana, which is an area where we have lots of potential and lots of great ideas on how we're going to be making that experience even better, and hopefully adding more cool APIs and possibilities in the future to let people like you, Mikael, extend Grafana. So if you have a look at this, so we have published a roadmap issue containing some of the things that we are planning to focus on, both short term and long term. So short term for Grafana 8.1 and 8.2. We are actually taking one of the projects that Marcus Olsson introduced, which was called the plugins catalog or the plugins marketplace. And we are bringing that one into Grafana core with the goal to replace some of the Grafana core plugin management features. One of the pretty cool new features is that you can install, upgrade, and uninstall plugins directly in Grafana without needing to restart or without using any CLI, which is a pretty cool new feature. We're also currently working on a plugin upgrade guide. Since we have a bunch of plugin APIs that have been deprecated in 8.0, there basically is a need for get a guide with some easy steps on how you can make your plugin Grafana 8 compatible. So that's also something that we are aiming to release pretty soon. And I think for 8.2, we haven't really decided exactly what we're going to do, but we think we're going to continue to work on the plugins catalog or the plugins management in core, adding more functionality and make it even better to install and manage your plugins. There are a lot of potential improvements that can be made to when you configure and when you work with your plugins. So that's something that we're going to look into. And if we talk a little bit about long term, so historically we have been kind of bad when it comes to introduce breaking changes in the plugins APIs. That's something that we're going to focus on and want to change. We want to have much more stable APIs. We want to make it easier to go between different Grafana versions and support multiple Grafana versions when you develop a plugin. And we also have ideas around providing way much better documentation, especially for developers. So it's going to be easier to know what parts of the API you can use for what kind of plugins. Hopefully we can provide a bunch of starter templates that can help developers as like a starting point or as examples for how we can build different things. I know that we have a couple of things like that, but we're looking into improving those. We also have talked about making it easier for plugin developers to wire up their plugin to our CI. So we haven't really decided how we're going to do that, but there's been talk about maybe publish GitHub Actions, so you easily can set up like building, testing, signing, and publishing of plugins. Internationalization is one thing that we are bringing to Grafana as a product, and such also to the plugins. So if you want to have a plugin that supports multiple languages, that should be easy to do. What else, Jack? Have I missed anything?
I don't think so. I think it's probably worth pointing out that the front-end platform does consist of back-end developers as well. So it is like a cross-functional team. So they'll be focusing on the improvements to the SDKs.
Yeah, and one thing that I haven't mentioned that we are also going to look into is the current Grafana toolkit. We know that it can be a challenge to use the toolkit in between Grafana versions. So that's also something that we want to improve and make it easier to use.
So I have a question. Or you mentioned that you're working on publishing a plugin migration guide, right? From upgrading plugins from 7 to 8. Is there any major things that you can think of right now that you can share? If someone is they have published a plugin for 7.5 and they're looking to migrate it to 8.0, is there like a big thing they need to take into account, or something they should be aware of already before the migration guide is already here?
So the tricky thing that it depends.
Nice.
It depends on the state of your plugin. So in Grafana 8, we dropped the support for the deprecated backend API for plugins. So if you have a plugin that you have built on the APIs prior to, not really sure when we introduced it, but 7 something, then you potentially need to upgrade the whole backend structure and use the new Go SDK. We are still supporting Angular when it comes to the front end and query editors and those things. So that should be fine. You can, like, bare minimum would basically be to upgrade the backend code. And we'll also have introduced a new data format called data frames. So that's also something that you need to handle within your plugin. But if you have a plugin that maybe you created in 7.5, then there is a good chance that most of these things already is in place and you're already using these things. But it depends on when you created plugin and if you have upgraded it.
I guess the first thing to do is just to try to install it on Grafana 8 and see if it still runs. And take it from there.
Yeah, exactly. And if you run into any troubles, I think there are a couple of issues open on GitHub where people have run into different problems. So I think there's plenty of help to find on GitHub.
So I know that there's a lot of people that are really excited about app plugins out there. Is there anything that we're scheduling or planning to do for app plugins at all? Right now, we for example don't have a tutorial for how to write app plugins. So many people struggle when they want to write their first one. Is there something that we can say to them, or is there something that's happening right now? Any big changes coming?
Jack, do you want to take this one, or should I?
I'm not aware of any major changes that are coming. One thing that we are planning that Marcus mentioned is to create more examples, that can showcase the various features that plugin developers can tap into. For example, in Grafana 8, we released the React routing, which makes it a much easier task for you to implement routing within your app plugin. But right now, we need to give that more exposure. So these ideas around the examples starters is probably our first step towards answering your question, Marcus.
Yep. So yeah, exactly. Yes. So routing and how to deal with the navigation parts of an app today is there are room for improvement in that area. So that's something that we're definitely going to do. But apart from that, I don't think we have anything planned. We have a bunch of requests regarding app plugins. Things like being able to extend the different menus in Grafana, like from everything like the main navigation to be able to add menu items in, like for example, in the panel menu. But we haven't really planned to jump on any of those things as one of the first things.
Okay, thank you.
Yes,
yeah.
Also, one of the, like you asked about the tutorials or something for app plugins. So today we have the storybook, we have an auto-generated API like reference guide. We have a bunch of tutorials, and we have a lot of documentation, or not, maybe not a lot, but we have documentation that is more focused against the developer community and how you can develop plugins and extend Grafana. We have had some discussions about maybe gather all of these things into some kind of a developer portal. Maybe focus on like structuring it a little bit better, make it easier to find the things that you're looking for, and also maybe more developer friendly, which includes like code examples and those kind of things.
Awesome. I remember as well that, I don't know if you mentioned it, but when you talked about the plugin catalog, you mentioned that we're going to make a lot of changes to installing and uninstalling and managing plugins from within Grafana. But I believe that it's already available, right? So it's not enabled by default. But so
exactly.
if you'd like to use it already, you can, right?
Enable. Yeah. And I think that actually it's documented on the Grafana. Let me see if I can find. But there's a you just need to enable it in your configuration, and you can play around with this feature today.
Awesome.
Is it going to be enabled by default? Because I think it's really useful when you can install the plugins without restarting the Grafana server.
So I think eventually it will probably become the default, but we've got it behind a feature flag because we have a lot of UX improvements that we want to make there.
Okay. But I like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah, it's a great feature, and kudos to Marcus Olsen for coming up with the original idea.
I think something that also needs to be mentioned is that it's a security aspect to it as well, because you're allowing people to install plugins through the UI rather than logging into the server, installing them from there. So we also want to make sure that we feel confident about that, and before we enable it by default.
Do you have any plans to?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Do you have any plans to redesign UX completely so we can have a kind of different skin, not to use a Grafana as a Grafana, but have it as a separate application totally with special logic? Is it something on your roadmap?
Could you give an example?
My example, I saw that there are a couple of people who is actually doing that. They totally change the Grafana. So you don't have Explore, you don't have plus buttons on your left side menu. You have your own application buttons, your side menus. So it's totally, so it looks totally different, right? So it's not. This is the idea, to use a Grafana as a platform, not as Grafana as what it is right now. So what is on your roadmap? Is it clear or not?
Yeah, I understand what we haven't talked about something like that, but we would like feedback like that. So if that's something that you want, like, please jump into the issue that Marcus is presenting and like write a comment about it. Hopefully there's others that feel that this is a great feature. And if a comment get a lot of thumbs up, then the probability of us actually like implementing it and making it available is bigger.
In terms of the, like in terms of navigation that you were mentioning, like showing certain icons or not showing those, or deciding which ones show there, that's actually something that because we're starting a new navigation project, and it's something that we may explore, like the possibility of rearranging what shows in your navbar and what to show now. I mean, it's still like super early stage, and this is just one of the multiple hypotheses that we have, but it could be.
Right, because the ideas in the community that you can use Grafana as a platform, as I said, and you don't need to, and your end users don't need all these things what you have right now on the panel. You maybe need some couple of things specific for the specific application. So it will be great to actually remove all of that and have the developer to control what he needs to expose.
Are you saying something like, embedding just a few panels, or so it's not just a theming issue, right? It's based on what you're saying, it's not about just changing a CSS. You're asking for something more, I only want to, show 2 panels and no menus, no nothing, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So we can go as like a Bootstrap, or like React itself, right? You can have you can start from scratch, and then you can add what you need, right, for your application. Because right now, what if you create something on Grafana, it's still going to look like Grafana, like a base in Grafana. But but if you want to have it as a platform, you should be able to remove everything what is in Grafana and just keep what you need.
So basically, it would be like more focus on maybe app plugins, and maybe you have your own app plugin, and that's kind of what your big focus instead of like dashboards and stuff like that. Is that what you're going for?
I mean, you still can have an app plugin, right, which is registered on your left side with your dashboards. So, I mean, you can still use everything what Grafana provides, authentication, all kind of panels, components, everything, but it should look different than Grafana itself. And this is what some community members already did. I can provide a couple of links later on to show actually what they created.
So I'm thinking, couldn't you do that already if you built a app plugin, for example, and it just enabled like a kiosk mode? So then you have total control over the whole area story, and then you can theme it however you want in your app plugin, and then you could use the components from the storybook and the UI packages. But that would mean that you would have to write your own app plugin in order to do that. So it's not easy to do if you're not a plugin developer.
Right, but how are you going to deploy it? I mean, my idea is that I have this application, right? I want to easily deploy it by end users, and when they start the application, this is what they will see: only my application, only my app plugin. right? Right now, they see the Grafana with everything Grafana provides. They have to install my application, for example, and then they go from there. But I mean, I just want a seamless experience. They install it, and they're already in the special plugin, application plugin.
So like completely bundled, that you don't even know that it's Grafana. You just install a binary, and then when you boot it up, you just see, a customized.
Yes.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
This is what Ryan McKinley talked some time ago. We discussed that, and this is what I think some of the platform team was doing. But I think UX have to be involved in that, and I think it's a great idea that you can actually have your application plugins, and if you're doing IoT different use cases, this is what you need, right? You just install it and you see what it is.
Yep. It's not. We did a hack project that maybe would enable this somewhat, but then you would need to embed Grafana in another application. But we basically did something that we called display profiles, I think we call it, right, Uche? So that basically gives the user the possibility to set up a profile where you can hide like menu and the time controls, and like you can basically customize what part of the Grafana interface that you want to show to the user and whatnot. Sounds like this could be used for what you're asking for.
And how to use it? Is there a tutorial documentation of it?
So it's not included in Grafana yet. There is a PR up and running for it. But what you basically do is either you provide a configuration, like just a configuration object, or I can send you the PR. But this would probably, this in combination with embedding Grafana in an application would basically end up with what you were asking for. In the PR, we basically we implemented something that we used the display profile to implement something that we called custom kiosk mode. So we re-implemented the whole kiosk mode with the display profiles, and also added something that we call kiosk mode that basically let the user to control what different UI elements that should be visible when you enter kiosk mode.
Is it this one?
Yeah. So exactly. So that was something that we did during a hackathon. I think it's 2 weeks ago or something. No, it's 1 week ago. Time flies. Maybe not so fast, but yeah.
Do you have a screenshot for it, or I mean, how we can visualize it?
I think we have a video that we probably can send a link to, or maybe attach to the PR, right, Uche?
And all Grafana hackathons, they're internal, right, for the company. I mean, how we can see
that one was internal. Maybe Marcus or Natalia knows more about the next ones, but
well, I think it's up to each team. If the team wants to tell the world about it, it's totally up to them. A lot of projects done during the hackathon are just fun stuff. They just want to experiment and don't intend to share it. Some projects will end up in the public sphere, but might not end up in Grafana. So it's totally up to the developers whether they want to share it or not. it's not like there's no NDA on this. They're very free to share their projects with the world.
Okay, I mean, I can take a look at it. It's hard to tell by the code what it is exactly. But thank you.
Yeah, and if you have questions or ideas or want to help out, feel free to jump in that PR and comment or fork it and add improvements.
Okay. I have a specific question. I don't know if you have an answer. Are you going to update RxJS library anytime soon to the latest version?
It is in our backlog, but I don't know exactly when we'll get to it.
Okay.
It's not too deep in the backlog also.
Are there any particular changes in the latest version that you are looking for, or?
I just updated one of the data sources to the latest version, and RxJS was updated as a part of it. And there was a couple of things we cannot fix without Grafana updating to it. So I have to use the older version. But I mean, there are like different changes, different things was changed. There is no true promise anymore, and you have to get the first or last value. And there are some types. But I mean, nothing for me. I just updated to the latest one, and it doesn't work.
Nice.
Just wondering when you can do that.
Hopefully soon. Do you have any other feedback or thoughts regarding building plugins? Are there any things that you are missing in the APIs, or any pain points that you have experienced, or like any feedback at all?
Marcus already mentioned that I was looking for application plugins because I was the first one who actually developed it to the state when it's a working state. And it's really hard to find, and they're helping the community as much as they can, because it's really hard to find good examples. Synthetic monitoring app, it's not the good example actually to look for. But still, I haven't done this routing, which was implemented recently. So I can look into that and do back engineering. But it will be great to see the tutorial how to do it properly. And it will be great to actually, as you said, the migration, it's a big thing. So the Redis data source plugins and applications, they supported Grafana 7. Now, when we move to Grafana 8, I just said that, okay, everything is based on Grafana 8 now, because we don't support, the latest version won't support Grafana 7 because there are so many things was changed. With graph panels, if you're working with not specific with general things, it all works. If you started to do more specific component, your custom panels, this is what breaking really hard. So I hope it won't break any feature versions like that. Same with the data source, with the dashboards. Right now in application plugins, or data source, you can bundle your dashboards. The problem is that when you introduce new panels, like time series panel replace graph panel, there is no life cycle for the dashboards, right? So you kind of have to include dashboards for graphs and time series at the same time. But it will be great actually to introduce to display different dashboards based on the version as a part of the left side menu, for example. And enterprise customers are not that fast as the open source customers. So if there are multiple enterprise customers who use Redis applications and who are still using version 7.2 or 7.3, and I have no idea when they upgraded to version 8. But still, I kind of have to break it and start to work on Grafana, support Grafana 8 only, because you cannot support both versions because of the theming was changed, time series panels, as I said, and different things.
Yeah, that's actually something that we're planning on looking into to, how should we say this? Like to basically give an example of how you can develop your plugin to support, in this case, both Grafana 7 and 8. And yeah, or feel free to jump in here, Jack. What do you say? Like we have talked about trying to.
Yeah, I mean, we've discussed ideas around building out these examples for separate, like various features that you can like easily focus on how to achieve that one thing rather than being given like a huge starter app that you just can't, you've got to like wade through. One other idea we have around this is that we can also use them for testing. We can use these examples to help us prevent those breaking changes, which, like your example, the theming, that can be really problematic if you're trying to support multiple versions in a single plugin. So yeah, that's our thinking behind it. But if you've got any input or ideas, we would love to hear them as well.
Also, we recently found the problem with versioning itself. If I have an application plugin and my application plugin depends on the data source, and I said that I want to have the latest version of a data source by my application plugin, it doesn't work. So it's kind of this, even versioning broke. So we have to release a new version of application plugin so it can install latest version of data source. If somebody can take a look into this versioning in package.json, it will be great. I don't remember if I opened the issue actually. Maybe I have to.
Yeah, that would be awesome to have an issue on, so we could dig into that a little bit more.
I work with Brian Gunn. I'm not sure if he opened it or I should. I will put it in my notes.
Yep.
But other than that, thank you for your hard work. Grafana 8 looks beautiful. It's so good.
Yeah, the challenge is, continue making it even more beautiful while the plugins are still working. That's the tricky part.
Right, and less breaking changes, because I remember there was a latest beta which introduced breaking change that you should have, I think, ref ID as a part of your query, which was not required anymore. And then when Grafana 8 was released, with ref IDs became mandatory, right? There is a kind of 1 week was before the last beta, which introduced breaking change and the general availability release, which I think it's not enough for any developers.
Totally agree. And that's things that we will try to figure out how to prevent.
So from your perspective, how much time in advance would you be expecting if we're to deprecate an API or a function, some form of functionality? How much ahead of time would you want to know that? And how would you want to know that? Are you reading the change logs, for example, for Grafana versions? Or is there any other place you would be looking for upcoming breaking changes, so to say? Because we're deprecating things. We realize there is better ways to do things on, and so we kind of need to deprecate things eventually. But how would you want to be notified of those changes? And how much time would you need to make that change?
I think changelog is a good way to go. But what I do, I look at every commit, what happened to the Grafana actually lately. Like every single one, I see what changed.
That's impressive. But I don't think that we should expect that every plugin author does that. I think you're exceptional that way.
Right. Every plugin what I have, I test on the master release all the time. When I finish something on the current latest, I do it on master or main. But at the same time, I think 1 month is good enough, from 1 to 3 months at least. or a couple of releases would be good. But still, I mean, not all the changes kind of developer can see as a breaking change. For example, this ref ID, which is required lately, right? So it was changed probably because it's not required. But the problem is that the way how it works, it's required, and this query was not executed anymore. So you kind of have to troubleshoot why it's not working, and it was changed last minute. So kind of deprecation of API, it's will take a version or two, right? And there was cases for that. It's totally understandable. But still, the changes in the code, they have to be properly validated. Who is using that, how, and what happened with it? Because there are so many plugins built.
Yeah, I know we have discussed, whether we want to have a set of plugins that we actually build for every version to make sure that they're still working. Obviously there's a few plugins that a lot of people use, and I think that they're great examples for how plugins should be built. So we kind of want to start testing them even more than we have in the past. Of course, we can't test every plugin that's out there. Of course, we would want to, but that would require us to continuously build every version of that plugin, and I don't think that's realistic at this point. But it's a very good point of actually trying to build some of our community plugins as well. We have, since I believe the last two versions, we are running now test environments with the most popular plugins, and for every new release we go through them and make sure they are still working. So that's one step in that direction that we've taken, but that's more for the end user rather than the plugin developer.
There are other things to improve.
So I'm kind of curious about the developer portal. Is there anything more you can say that? Is there any, anything more you can share in terms of how will it look like? What kind of documentation would we expect to see there? And, is there a time frame? I guess it's the obvious question.
I'm not sure about a time frame. I know it's pretty. I know it's a pretty early stages right now. I think it comes from. It's come from internal conversations around discoverability of certain things in our current docs. Particularly, I think a lot of developers struggle a bit with the way our types are documented, and searching or trying to find those is quite problematic right now, I believe. So yeah, I think the focus is mostly around trying to just make it more accessible, just better discoverability. I don't know. I think Marcus has had more input than me so far. I don't know if he's got anything extra to add.
No, I spot on. The only thing that I know for sure, Marcus, is that you will be included.
Thank you.
So when we start to look into this a little bit more details, you will definitely be involved, and probably a bunch of other people. But I think the idea, I'm not sure if it was you or Ryan or someone else who mentioned it, but the current documentations, we have a bunch of auto-generated API docs, which messes a bit with the possibilities to search in the doc. And the majority of the documentation we have today is more end-user focused. So when they search and they end up in coded definition documentation, it's kind of it will bring a bad experience to them. But the other, it's also basically going to be the other way around. Like people that want to develop a plugin and looking for like really technical stuff, they end up in a more, this is how you do it in Grafana UI. You press here, here, and here, and then you press save, which is kind of annoying if you're going to develop a plugin. So splitting on these two things into two different areas makes sense.
It makes total sense to me. I know that I'm getting questions every now and then on where can I go to learn how to build a plugin, and there's no obvious URL I can send them to. There is the overview for plugin development in the official docs, which have some guides, but then there's the tutorials, and then there's developers.grafana.com, which has the storybook, and then there's the reference documentation for TypeScript, and then there's the SDK documentation for Go, and they're all spread out. And so we do have quite a lot of documentation. It's just not discoverable from one single place. And I think that sounds like what we're trying to improve with the developer portal.
Yep.
And when you cannot find in the documentation, you have to go to the code and see how it was implemented.
Yep.
But again, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say something I would love to see is an easy understanding of the theme. When that theme changes, I find it can be quite an interesting experience to figure out what matches up to what.
Right. And if you're going to create this kind of project with documentation for developers, it will be great to have like a change log, what actually was changed, and to notify, if you can have a developer mail list and notify everyone, oh, this is what we changed recently, for example. Because, I looked in documentation a year ago, or more than a year ago, and now when I look for it again, I'm kind of writing an article, I'm looking into documentation, oh, there is so many things was changed. And sometimes new features actually change documentation, but nobody got notified that it was changed. So how you can know about it?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
That is a great idea, particularly around introduction of new components. I don't know how current developers go about learning about those things. Is it a case for yourself going into the code or going into Storybook and just happening upon it?
Yeah. Storybook, code, toolkit.
I think me personally, I go to the Storybook to see what's available, but in order for me to realize how to use it, I go to the repository because a lot of the components in the Storybook, they're meant to demonstrate how it looks like, but when you look at how I don't know what the term is it the action? No, the story. Then it's encapsulated, so you don't actually see how you use that component. And so usually you'd have to go to the repository and find that specific component to see what properties it supports.
At the same time, when you look into the code, there is an old code, like a legacy code, which uses it in one way. This is a new code, which uses it a totally different way. And you try to figure out which one is which and what approach you have to go with. So,
you're maintaining now, what is it, 4, 5 plugins? How do you version them when when a new version of Grafana comes out? How do you make sure to keep compatibility? You mentioned that you're now you need to release a new version of the plugin, and that won't work on previous versions of Grafana, right? So are you targeting specific versions of Grafana for your plugin releases, or are you targeting ranges, or how do you think about supporting multiple versions of Grafana?
If you're talking about Redis plugins, 3 of them. So what I did, I released there was version 1 of plugins, which support Grafana 7. And when I realized that application plugins, there was so many things was changed, I just moved them to Grafana 8, called version 2. then they support only version 8. If you want a version Grafana 7, right, go to the previous version. For the data source, there is not a lot of things was changed in the data source, so it's still compatible. So we released this new version of the data source 1.5, but the new one I'm working on right now is going to be 2.0, and it's going to be on Grafana 8 only. With base64 image, same thing. I just added new functionality. I released it, but I never put it into Grafana repository itself. In Grafana repository, it is the one who is going to Grafana 8 based on all the Grafana 8 dependency libraries. So it's there is a trade-off. And if you look into statistics, you can find on playgrafana.com, there are already 10% or more installation Grafana 8. So you kind of take it. Grafana 8 is better from my point of view, right? There is no point not to switch to Grafana 8. And this is why you do this everything is Grafana 8 now.
Like a cutoff, yeah.
Like a cutoff. I mean, there is not, eventually everybody will be using Grafana 8. I know that enterprise users will take longer to migrate because there are still processes, right? And there are actually many plugins which still not supporting Grafana 8, I think so. And the dashboards itself, you have to change the dashboards. But eventually everybody will go there, and I think, and my plans is I'm going to use more custom panels, and time series panels was very crucial for me to use it. So, because the graph panel I used before, it's totally not supported anymore. There is no tooltips, there is nothing. So it's why I just migrate to Grafana 8. Variables changed. There are so many things actually changed between 7 and 8. And it's really hard to spot these issues until you kind of do it manually. I mean, even I have a CI, which works all the time. There is still many things you cannot CI properly. You have to kind of do it manually. And I have 3 or 4 projects actually based on Redis plugins, which based on different technologies, and they have to migrate as well with their own dashboards. So it's kind of a challenge to keep up with the Grafana versions.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all that. It's really great to hear that from in the Grafana team. Even though we're building the plugin platform, there obviously the community is writing and building so many plugins that in a way you know this more than we do, or you have more experience about what the challenges are, and as we've heard now, just now, there's a ton of things we can learn from this. So thank you very much. We're coming up on the hour here, so we're about to end this community call. Is there any final questions or comments you wish to make to anyone? Okay. Well, thank you all for joining us today. It's been great. The next time will be in August. I don't know the exact date yet, but you can go to our agenda. And then I believe the next team that we're gonna hear from is the Observability Squad. So if you're interested in that, please join us. And thank you again. See you next time.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Ciao. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Hi, Alexei. So you just joined at the end of the community call. So everyone just left, unfortunately. Did you get the hour wrong, maybe? That's okay if not. So the community call was recorded, so we will upload this to YouTube as soon as we can. So you'll be able to watch the recording over there. I'm gonna log off for the day, and see you next time.